I would say these are the three sort of basic molecular mechanisms that happen. And remember all the other things we talked about, the molecular pumps that pump things out, acetylation, methylation, sulfation,
phosphorylation and ubiquitination.
All those things that you know more about than I do.
I don't. I just know that Dr. Yasko calls them regulation when she's putting a label on them to use. She calls them regulation.
Yeah. But all these are enzymatic steps that are carried out by a series of enzymes, which are all potentially damaged by the presence of these toxins that have come into the system. And therefore, what Amy is looking at is the secondary damage. Yeah? It's a symptom that has been created by this other thing. And the primary causal strategy has to be to take the toxin off the enzyme.
Right.
Yeah? Her strategy is more, well, let's look at the enzyme and try to find a biochemical intervention that will make the system function in spite of the damaged enzyme.
And then slowly but surely get rid of the toxin, I think, is the ultimate goal as well. Right.
Of course. And my approach is the other way around. It's kind of target the toxin first and let the body heal itself.
Okay.
You know, that's the other way. Now, I think we need, with the primary damage mechanisms, we need to mention the RNA here also.
Right.
Now, RNA is a substance that one of the functions of it was to read the DNA. Yeah, it copies basically the great book. The DNA is a book. Yeah, this is the RNA is a librarian. It goes into the library, studies the sequence of the genes to make this particular enzyme, and the RNA carries this information then to the cell organelles that then actually make the enzyme. Yeah, okay. So this is a function of the RNA, and Amy has worked very much with that. And RNA now, the latest is, has its own independent other functions inside the cell as a regulating informational substance that has a multitude of other jobs. And Amy is, of course, for me, probably the world specialist in that. However, it is again enzymes that put the RNA together, and the enzymes are damaged. And rather than supplementing the RNA or fixing the RNA, it makes much more sense to detoxify the cell so the enzymes can function again that then are responsible for making the RNA. Yeah? So what I want to distinguish in this book always is like what's causal, what's the primary thing, and then what's the outcome. Right. So the RNA damage is an outcome of the toxicity, a direct outcome of that.
But even when you're targeting the cause, anything that you can do to relieve the burden while you're targeting, if you can afford to relieve it.
Absolutely, but this is going to be your quality that you're going to bring at the end to make that practical.
Right.
But ultimately, when you're a mom with a kid, you don't give a hoot about what's primary and what's secondary. You just want to kind of put a program together that addresses all of it, that gets you from A to Z, the quickest way possible with the least amount of money spent in the middle.
Right.
And so you're going to put that together. However, what my job is, what I found working with a lot of moms, that in the multitude of the things, moms lose view of what they're doing, and given any normal mom that exists in the field of an autistic child, there is a basic primary mechanism that all illness has, that each illness is like an entity that wants to sustain itself. And usually when you give mom 10 choices of what she should do, and mom goes home and finds this is just one too many, she will drop that one intervention that is the primary one and do the 9 secondary ones and never get the child well. And so I feel with our book it's going to be very important that we are always, I feel I have an obligation as a healer, you know, to point out what is the primary thing. If you leave 9 away and only do 1, do the primary strategy, which is detoxification and avoidance.
A friend of mine the other day called it mission drift. I'm like, oh, can we use that? That's so good. Because it's true. You start off with this really clear idea of what you think the job is, and then, whoa, okay, back to the mission drift.
And just kind of really hear me on this. that the illness is like an entity. It is a consciousness. Illness has a consciousness to it that wants to, like everything else in life, sustain itself. And it does that by creating an unconscious field that will make the mom do all the secondary things perfectly and leave out the primary thing.
To maintain that.
To maintain itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Dads too. I always forget the dads. I can't. You're copying me on that one.
Yeah. No, the dads, of course.
We have one sitting here right now.
No, dads have long understood, in order for dad to be happy, they have to make mom happy. And there's only one word that describes it all: yes.
Jimmy's smiling.
Most of us may have understood that a long time ago. So in that way, I consider the moms the primary ones, and the dads the secondary ones.
You could say that. But we don't want to leave anybody out. We just want to talk to anybody who's on the quest of healing their family and their child.
So now let's pursue that a little further. So we talked about oxidation and inflammation and enzyme damage. These are the things that I understand well, and that everybody can follow through. And this is when 99% of the literature has been written on that. But what is missing is to look at the bigger picture. What are the other things that come out of this? So, number one, I look a lot at the more macroscopic structures in the body. Let's see what systems we have that are important for detoxification and that are important when we look at the damage. So one of the systems that has been least understood is the lymphatic system.
Okay.
The lymphatic system is a transport system and a digestive system for toxins, period. Okay. Yeah, so you cannot do a discussion on neurotoxicity without discussing the lymphatic system.
Okay.
Yeah? So this is just some point I want to make here. Yeah? And then the other primary system for detoxification is the intestinal system. So we need to have a discussion about, all the way from the chewing all the way to the toilet bowl.
Right.
This is in terms of the amount of toxins processed, the most important system, and all the damage that occurs in this system. The measles virus that we discussed, the intestinal worms and parasites are a huge issue, and so forth. And then the renal system, how does it work? How do we produce urine? What makes kidneys be able to excrete toxins? What prevents them from excreting toxins? But that discussion is still in the realm of detoxification, the exit routes. We just looked at the molecular mechanisms. I just wanted to put that here, that we haven't looked at the major structures. The bite plays a huge role in how the lymphatic detoxification of the brain works.
You called it brain drain.
Brain
I
drain,
like that.
yes, absolutely. The tonsils, scars in the tonsils, chronic infections in the tonsils completely prevent drainage of toxins from the brain. A poor occlusion of the teeth prevents drainage of the brain. So there is many mechanical factors that we need to look at when we discuss detoxification, which we can simply, with tiny chapters, sort of kind of put in.
I have it listed, but yeah.
Now, if you go back to the damage that occurs, in terms of a little bit of science, we know there's articles on the inflammation of the brain in autistic children in different parts of the brain, and depending on where the inflammation is, little different symptoms. We know that many of the children that are later diagnosed with autism already at birth have statistically speaking, a slightly smaller brain, and then at about 6 months or so, the brain growth accelerates massively, and then at the age of 2 years, when the diagnosis is made, they usually have a bigger brain than normal children. You know that one.
Begin.
So we know that there is not only damage on a enzyme type level, but that damage expresses itself in actually the growth of tissue. So there's actually tissue remodeling, tissue changes. It's postulated that the autistic kids have actually more synapses, that there's more sprouts of the dendrites going out. Each neuron makes about 10,000 or so connection with other nerves.
Right.
Each nerve cell has 10,000 tentacles that go out to connect with other nerves.
Right.
There is this phase from 6 months to 2 years when the brain cells of the autistic kid sprouts enormously. And so the simple theory on that one is that one of the mechanisms that prunes the sprouting, prevents the sprouting, is missing. And again, it's usually an enzyme. We don't know exactly which one. Well, we don't know exactly which one that is. At least I don't know, I haven't found it in the literature. But it's just an observation. And then remember, we have several 10,000 different enzymes in the body. And rather than trying to map those out and come up with a theory of which one it is much easier. Give the kid some transdermal DMPS, please, to detoxify the enzymes so they can go back to work. I don't care what their names are, So I just wanted, with those numbers, just kind of give you, there's 5 interventions that we have, possibly. There's probably 60,000 enzymes or so that we're talking about. You may want to look up the exact number if it is known at all so far. And it's an illusion that we can grasp this ever.
Right. And then if we find one that's faulty, that's the deal.
And the thing is, we're looking at a few genes now that we can test for. They test for like maybe 20 of them.
Right.
We think, okay, this is it, we have the answer now. We find like out of the 20, 8 or so show polymorphism or are absent. No, we know very, very little about it yet. It's too early. However, what we do know is there's 1 or 2 key culprits that are affecting all of these. We can take that out and trust in going back to the old osteopathic principle that the body is a self-healing mechanism. And rather than kind of trying to intervene on all of these 20,000 or 60,000 levels, we address a few key issues and then trust that the system resets itself.